test is in 4 parts: Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, and Part 4. Now look at Part 1.
Part 1.
1. You are going to hear a conversation taking place in the airport. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 7. Now listen to the tape and answer the questions.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Northwest Airlines. How can I help you today?
I'd like to check in for the 2 o'clock flight to Nairobi.
Okay. Oh, that flight has been moved back to 2:45. Nothing major, just a weather delay that the plane experienced in Casablanca. May I have your name, please?
Sure, it's Jim Harkness.
Is that Harkness with 2 S's?
Yep, and that's Jim with 1 M.
Got it. Oh, I see you're connecting from Beijing. You sure are getting around.
Yeah, I'm the director of the Worldwide Fund for Nature in Beijing. I'm going to Nairobi for a conference on conservation planning.
Fascinating. Will you have any luggage to check in?
Yes, 1 bag, 1 carry-on, and 1 laptop.
Fine. Put the bag on the scale, please. We are going to fill out customs forms before departure. Can I ask about the contents of your check-in bag?
Sure, it's clothing, personal effects, some gifts, and a few books.
Thanks. What seating would you prefer, aisle or window?
I'd like a window seat, 3 rows back from those large TV screens if possible.
Let me see here. We have 1 4 rows back. Is that okay?
Yeah, I just hate being right in front of those screens. Then I have to watch every dumb movie that comes on.
Now look at questions 8 to 10. As the talk continues, answer questions 8 to 10.
I understand. Is that your carry-on?
Yes, I bought it in India last year.
It sure is a nice bag. Unfortunately, I think it's too big for the overhead storage compartment. Maximum dimensions for carry-on baggage is 16 inches wide by 10 inches high by 21 inches long.
Oh, well, it's okay with width and length, but it's 12 inches high. Are you sure that it won't fit? I've squeezed it in before.
No, I'm sorry. You'll have to check it in with an agent prior to boarding.
All right, it's no big deal.
One final thing. Do you have any DVDs that you purchased in China?
Yes, I have my own music CDs.
Okay, that's fine. We're not allowed to transport DVDs. We're working on controlling copyright regulations imposed by WTO.
Sure, I understand. Is that everything?
Yes, it is. You have a wonderful flight now.
Thank you.
That is the end of Part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to Part 2.
Part 2.
You will hear a talk by a tour guide. First, you will have some time to look at questions 11 to 17. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 17. Welcome to San Fernando City Tours. I'm Mark, your tour guide. We have a lot to see in 3 hours, so make sure you're comfortable. We'll be traveling into the historical district first, and then into the town center. After that, it's out to the harbor, and we'll finish up at the lighthouse, just past the harbor. That will take us up to midday, and after that, you're free to do what you want. At the lighthouse, you'll have a chance to visit the tea room and take photographs of the magnificent coastline. Now, as we have only 3 hours, we won't be able to take you around the shopping district, but we think you'd prefer to look around the shops there in your own time anyway. San Fernando has some well-known tourist attractions, the lighthouse, for example, and the National Library. However, the little-known military museum is not to be missed. Be sure to visit before you leave. Now, there's a lot to do in San Fernando. Indeed, there really is something for everyone. For those who love the water, I can recommend a trip on the Seafarer, one of the most famous boats on the San Fernando River. It does an evening trip with a 3-course meal included. It's great fun for everyone, but especially for young people in their teens or 20s. After 9, there's a disco on the boat, and it gets really lively. Then there's a climbing wall near the town center. It's incredibly popular, with a large wall for expert climbers and a smaller wall for novices. There's a junior wall and a creche, so it's a great day out for those of you with kids. And if you like walking, there's some great walking tours. The City Sights tour is highly recommended, as is the walking tour by the coast. But that one's only for the fit, not really suitable for children or the elderly. For more mature people, or those less able to get around, I would suggest a tour around the vineyards. It can be done in the luxury of a coach, and it's a wonderful way to explore the region's wines. Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 18 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 18 to 20. Naturally, there's a charge for all these attractions, but you can get 15% off if you have an Explorer Pass. If you don't have a pass but would like one, the driver here has application forms. Just ask him for one and fill it out while on the tour. Then you hand it into the tour office. Normally, it costs $10, but this year it's just $7. When you hand it in, you'll get your picture taken for the card on the spot, and then your card is ready to use. Remember to show it whenever you pay for anything. The discounts apply not just to tourist attractions, but some bars and restaurants. Basically, everywhere you see a red Explorer symbol. Ah, we're coming up to the historical district now. If you'd like to look at
That is the end of Part 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3.
Maria is a student at university. She has handed the first draft of an essay to her tutor. The tutor has read it, and now they are discussing ways the essay can be improved. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Listen carefully to the first part of the conversation and answer questions 21 to 25.
Well, Maria, I have to say I was quite impressed by your essay. It's a big improvement on the last one.
Really? I'm glad. I put a lot more work into this one. I really spent ages on it.
And it shows. You've addressed most of the problems I pointed out last time. In particular, the style and language are much more appropriate for an academic essay.
So that aspect is okay?
Absolutely. If you carry on like this, you shouldn't have any significant problems in that department.
That's a relief. I've been quite worried about that, although I've been reading a lot of other essays to try to get the right style.
Well, I'd say you've been successful. There are just one or two minor things you could look at. Your punctuation's quite basic. It's really just full stops and commas. And parentheses.
Brackets?
Yes, brackets if you prefer. In academic writing, these are best used only occasionally, if at all. You use them rather too often.
Okay, I see.
And I'm sorry to mention it, but your spelling.
I know, but I'm working on a foreign computer. The spell checker doesn't work for English.
Are you sure? Have you tried changing the setting to English?
No, I haven't.
Well, I should see if that's possible. I haven't marked you down this time, but, well, some of my colleagues are a bit old-fashioned about spelling. I'd try to get that sorted out if I were you.
Okay, I understand. I'll try to change the setting.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
The only major problem I have with the content of your essay is the introduction. The introduction should, well, introduce the theme of the essay. You've put some of the most important points there. For example, this bit. The statistics about the growth of railways in the 1850s. That really should go in the main body of the essay. And so should this paragraph about changes in patterns of employment. In general, I'd say your introductory section should be no more than half as long as it is at the moment.
Okay. And I should move those points forward?
Precisely. And going back to the railways, they're one of the most significant factors for change in this period. But apart from those statistics in the introduction, you only briefly mention them. I'd like to see a lot more on that, and the influence the expansion of the railways had on patterns of social and economic behaviour.
You mean how with the railways people could travel to find work and could meet people from other areas?
Exactly. Then in the midsection, well, it's not a big thing, but this quotation from the Times.
You think it's too long?
Well, you said it.
I couldn't think of a way to shorten it.
Do you think it's really necessary?
You mean I could just get rid of it?
Yes. You've already made the point and backed it up with other evidence. The quotation's redundant, really.
Okay. Well, that'll be easy.
There were various other minor points, which I've noted in the margins. You can look at those later. But moving forward to the end here, I wasn't quite sure what this meant.
The final paragraph?
Yes. Are you saying that, on the whole, the changes of the mid-19th century tended to improve the lives of ordinary people or not? It's not very clear.
It's not?
No, it isn't. I'd add a few lines clarifying your position.
Okay. When do you want the final draft?
No, the end of term will be fine. But there was just one other thing, the bibliography. Did you really read all these books?
No.
Just the books you actually consulted will be fine. You don't need to include everything ever published on the subject.
Right, okay. Thanks. Bye.
Goodbye.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
You will hear a talk on research in the Indian Ocean. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
In this, the first lecture in our series on the changing face of the oceans of the world, we are going to look at the Indian Ocean, into which the Oceanography Department at the Institute here in Australia has been doing pioneering research over the past 5 years. Let us start with some facts about the Indian Ocean, to give you an idea of the scope and complexity of the enterprise we have undertaken. As you can see from the diagrams here on the screen, showing the relative size of the planet's 5 oceans, the Indian Ocean comes third after the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans, but is larger than the Southern Ocean and the Arctic Ocean. On this slide, you can see that the Indian Ocean is different from the 2 larger oceans in that it is landlocked to the north and does not extend into the cold regions of the North Pole. Covering some 73,440,000 square kilometres, the ocean constitutes approximately 1/7 of the Earth's surface and about 20% of the world's total ocean area. At the equator, it is around 6,400 kilometres wide, with the average depth being about 3,400 metres, and with the deepest point being the Java Trench at 7,450 metres. Flowing into the Indian Ocean, we have some of the world's greatest rivers. The Zambezi here, the Ganges here, the Indus, the Brahmaputra, and the Tigris-Euphrates just here. The 2 largest islands in the Indian Ocean, Madagascar, here off the coast of Africa, and Sri Lanka, here off the southern tip of India, are structurally parts of the continents of Africa and Asia, while islands like the Seychelles are exposed tops of submerged ridges. The Maldives are low coral islands, and Mauritius and Réunion are volcanic cones. The surface waters of the ocean are warm, except where the ocean touches the cold waters to the south. A network of scientists, mainly oceanographers and meteorologists from around the world, are monitoring changes in the ocean's temperature and acidity, especially where it meets the Southern Ocean, in order to see how global warming is having an effect on the waters there. An assessment is also being carried out on how this is impacting on low-lying habitats and peoples in the more populated coastal regions around the rim of the ocean. In the warmer north, islands are vulnerable to even the subtlest changes in sea levels and tides, so they are being closely watched. Moreover, a close eye is being kept on wind changes, especially alterations to the monsoon rains, typhoons, cyclones, and any other natural phenomena. In addition to the information sent from the ship that we have stationed off Antarctica, in the south of the Indian Ocean, data are being transmitted round the clock from buoys anchored at various points around the ocean. 5 of these buoys are observing ice packs and icebergs coming into the Indian Ocean from Antarctica. Besides the buoys, data on cloud cover and wind and temperature change are received by satellite. Satellite images are also being used to record the size of the icebergs from the moment they break off from Antarctica. Their course is then mapped as they move out into the Southern Ocean. Here at the Institute, the raw data from the various sources are received and the information is then constantly processed by a bank of computers. Once the data have been collated, the next step in the process is the analysis by experts here and at centres around the world, looking for even the slightest shift in patterns of temperature, wind, and sea levels. In the light of the fact that this is a global enterprise, the Institute is staffed 24 hours a day with researchers working in shifts, and we are in constant contact with centres all around the world. In total, 900 experts from around the globe are involved in the programme. The work at the Institute is now into the 5th year of a 10-year data collection, which began in 2003. The analysis of the 5 years to 2008 will be published early in 2009. However, changes in patterns are already being noticed since the data have been gathered.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.